We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order.
New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
The councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It is the 25th of April, 2020, as we once again are documenting the crisis of our republic here as we do every week. And we hope you'll tell somebody about the broadcast as we progress here. We are actually documenting the taking away of our freedom every week. It seems like more and more. And now we all should be grateful because our kings and queens who double as governors, the monarchs that double as governors across this great land of ours, have now decided to give us back some of that freedom in phases, in stages. This is just absolutely ridiculous. But what's really ridiculous is the fact that there's so many of our brothers and sisters going along with this insane removal of our freedom because they think it's expedient. They think it's necessary. You know, the Constitution was created to guarantee the rights of the people. And the reason why is because the governments are very ingenious. They're very genius at coming up with excuses. They're very genius at coming up. Tyrants are always very innovative to come up with ways of removing you from your wealth and your freedom. And that's what they've always done. And so constitutions were supposed to be there to guarantee the rights of the people and to make it to the point where they cannot take your freedom away despite what circumstances may come along, or shall we say perceived circumstances. Because that's more and more what it looks like that we have here. This pandemic, and I'll put that word in quotes, while some are sick from a COVID-19 or flu-like illness or something, it looks more and more to me like a tempest in a tea kettle. Anyway, we'll get into some of the data, and we'll get into the fact that they're playing tricks with the data. And that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. If it was real, if it was that important, then why would they be messing around with the data? Why would they be making? Why would they be ramping up the numbers as we've covered in previous weeks? But I've got more on that front today. And by the way, I do have to start the show off on somewhat of a somber note. And I don't even know if Vicky, I don't even know if you know this. Are you there, Vicky? By the way?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening.
I just want to make sure that you that I got your potted up properly. Most of you will, well, many of you might remember Marcus Mumford. I don't know if you heard about this, Vicky, but he was found just recently dead in his home. Marcus Mumford, for those that don't remember, he was the defense attorney for Ammon Bundy and the Bundy bunch that were involved in the standoff at Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. They had the trial in Oregon, and you might remember him as being the attorney who, when the Bundys were exonerated, the judge would not allow them to go because they had planned to hold them over for another trial in Nevada. Well, Marcus Mumford objected loudly to that, and for that the federal marshals tased him. That was the man that was just found in his home unresponsive. Now, they say that they saw no sign of any foul play or anything like that, and I'm sure people will suspect that, as did I. But so far they're saying that there was no foul play, and I guess there is an autopsy that's going to be performed. I do know from reading, I think I've read that his father or some family member also died at a young age. I think he was only like in his 40s.
Yes, he was young. Marcus was young, and that was a shock. And he's the one that actually talked to me and got me to testify for Ammon Bundy.
Ah, okay.
And he worked so hard on that case, and he was full of energy. And he drove all the way over here to Twin Falls to talk to me, you know, and then he talked to everybody, I guess, that he recruited to testify. But, I mean, he seemed healthy as a horse to me.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's one of those things that are, you know, and I remember him very vividly. Well, he had somewhat of a unique name, and so he stood out for that. But he stood out definitely for his passion, and you know, not many attorneys are be willing to be assaulted by federal marshals over their client.
Well,
I mean,
you know what? That judge should have been censured for that, because the U.S. Marshals may have wanted to take him to Nevada, but they didn't file the proper paperwork. They didn't have the papers to hold him, to hold Ammon Bundy.
Well, that judge should have been censured for many, many, many things.
Yeah, she allowed that scene to go on in her courtroom.
Yes,
and she could have stopped it, and she should have stopped it, because the marshals were not following the law.
Well, any judge that doesn't allow the Constitution in their courtroom, to even be seen, you know, let alone quoted or anything like that, something's really wrong here. And that's where we are here in America today with these federal so-called judges. They're tyrants on the bench, just like the governors are tyrants in their offices. I mean, we really have a nation of monarch wannabes. It is really remarkable where we are now.
Well, you know what my observation was? I'd never really been involved in any court case. And, you know, the only court I'd ever been to is traffic court when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, as far as a trial or anything like that, I never even served on jury duty. But I had this idea in my mind of our judicial system being operating as I saw it, you know, on programs like Perry Mason and Matlock, and you know, honest prosecutors, honest defense attorneys, and judges who served as the arbitrator between the two, and justice will be done.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's a shock to me, you know, seeing how our justice system really functions.
Yeah, and we put the word justice in quotes.
It's corrupt. It's as corrupt as in any third world country, as far as I can see. And I really hate to say that.
No, it is.
Because the one thing that you need to be able to rely on in order to have a civilized society is the rule of law and integrity among your public officials.
Yes, exactly.
All of them.
And the founders set the Constitution up in such a way, they were so concerned about, innocent people being accused of crimes and being sent away for those crimes, that they actually put many good defenses in there for the accused, because the idea being is that it's better for some guilty to go free than for an innocent to be accused and convicted and sent away, because then you get into situations like show trials, political trials, which is what a lot of this stuff was, in my opinion, with the Bundys. I think a lot of it was the whole thing is a show trial, and like you said, you could easily be forgiven for having that naivety about the justice system, since the vast majority, I think everyone, except for people like me who pay attention I'm kind of an unusual specimen. I think we all are, many of us who are very, very carefully paying attention to what's going on are kind of unusual. Most people are not like that. And so I think as a result of that, unless you've run afoul of the so-called justice system, unless you've been a victim of it, or somebody that that's relatively close to you, then you do have that illusion. And it's really easy to have that illusion.
I have to confess, I was one of those people that thought if you've been arrested or if you're on trial for something, you must have done something. They wouldn't do that to an innocent person. But, man, I just don't think there are any limits.
Even to this day, I still am careful to remind both myself and other people, when someone is accused of a crime, I may think they're guilty, but I always have to try to put that caveat in there that if they're guilty, because being accused is not the same as being convicted. And there are many people that are accused. And to be honest with you, I've watched shows like Forensic Files, for instance, because the stories fascinate me and the science fascinates me. Okay? And I'll be honest with you. Sometimes, doing this, and I do it from an analytical standpoint, some of the evidence that they do get some of these convictions on, now there's some of them that you think, okay, the guy, I'm sure, really probably did it. But there have been cases that they have presented on that show that I was absolutely sure that as a viewer, based upon what they presented, I said, this guy more than likely was convicted on nothing. They had no evidence, Vicky. No evidence at all. And I'm shaking my head saying, I can't believe, maybe I should be able to believe it, that a jury would send somebody away on that. I said, you would think that on a TV show they're going to put their best foot forward and present their best evidence. So I assume that they did that on the TV show. And what the jury heard was at least as good, as what I seen here being presented. And I saw nothing. There was one case where a black guy was was riding across on his bicycle, and because I think somebody the culprit escaped on a bicycle, he just happened to ride across past a police car, and he was arrested and convicted for a murder that I'm sure he did not commit. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that is about the only evidence they had. It was unbelievable. So the jury system is supposed to be good, but as we've seen, I think many jurors, unfortunately, and we know that they do jury tampering in the courtroom. We know that they prep the jury and fill their head with bullcrap before they ever start. First of all, I don't think we have to discount any evidence, do we? I mean, when you're a jury, you're pretty much sovereign in there. You don't have to discount. You can consider whatever evidence you want. You know, if you just got a feeling in the pit of your stomach that somebody's guilty, that's enough. Or, I mean, innocent. You know, I mean, you're pretty much, you are the boss when you're the juror. But, and there's a reason for that. So they do everything they can to try to bias you toward conviction. But unfortunately, most jurors, I think they just don't know their rights. They're not well versed or versed at all in what it means to really do a good job as a juror. And as a result, many get convicted. And I think they have that same assumption. They have that same assumption that if someone's accused, this person's accused of some heinous stuff, then they just must be guilty. And that's a bad position for a jury to be in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think probably so many of the defendants have public defenders, and that was another revelation to me, that the public defenders, if you look at everything from the point of view of numbers, everything is about the numbers. You know, prosecutor's office gets money based on the number of convictions. Mm-hmm. The public defender's office, same thing. You know, the number of cases that they handle, not how well they do, but the number of cases. So if the court appoints a public defender, they get a fixed amount of money for handling that case. Well, all the incentive is just to get a plea deal, to negotiate a plea deal for the defendant. Doesn't matter whether they're guilty or not, you know, and they get paid the same amount of money, no matter what.
Yeah.
So they make the most money by getting the quickest deal. It's just everything in our country is based on the numbers.
Yeah, and that's sad.
The statistics, the money, and that seems to be the only thing that counts. I don't really believe that for the vast majority of people that there is such a thing as integrity and honor.
No, I agree.
I don't think that exists in this country anymore, for the vast majority.
Well, there is some integrity and honor among some local sheriffs. Turning a corner here, there is one nice thing, one bright spot, I guess, if you want to talk about solutions in the way of some of this quarantine stuff and house arrest and that sort of thing. We have 4 northern Michigan sheriffs who have come out publicly and said they will not enforce this governor's coronavirus orders. They are in various counties. The sheriff in Benzie, Lenawee, Manistee, and Mason counties. They created they say the order created a vague framework of restrictions that only confuse Michigan citizens. The sheriffs say they will consider complaints on a case-by-case basis and apply common sense in assessing the apparent violation, according to a joint statement from those particular county sheriffs. So, you know, I'm very encouraged by that. I think more sheriffs need to come out and do just that. So, and those people in those counties, and I do see some slight civil disobedience in the way of some of even these big box stores. This last executive order that Whitmer had put into place banned a certain number of people in the store at the same time. It was supposed to be if you have a certain square footage, you had to consider how many square feet, and each person had only one person per certain number of square feet. And all they did was slap a sign on the door and say, all right, you know, limited occupancy, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't stop anybody from going in. They probably talked about it and decided, you know what, I'm not going to put somebody here at the door. Her latest thing, she just extended it again, and now they're requiring face masks in public places. Now, she did say that she wasn't going to, well, here, I got audio, but she did say she wasn't going to require or make it a criminal offense, basically, if you don't. But she strongly encouraged it, and stores are supposed to, businesses are supposed to have masks available for people publicly. I've determined I'm not going to wear one.
I would never wear a mask that they handed to me in a store. How do I know that they didn't?
Well, I don't think the store is providing them. I think you're supposed to provide your own. I'm talking about employments. Places of employment are supposed to provide them. I think the stores are supposed to provide them for their own employees. But, I mean, again, where are you going to get all these things, for one thing?
The whole thing is so stupid.
It is.
So
it's incredibly stupid. It's incredibly stupid.
Yeah, if you can go into a grocery store and walk around and, pick up the fruit, put it down, and you're holding on to the cart that, how many people before you have had their hands on that cart? I mean, it's just...
Well, here's the thing. It makes it hard to breathe. You suffer from a lack of oxygen when you wear these things. As a matter of fact, there's an article on InfoWars right now. Well, I mean, I saw it yesterday. Driver wearing N95 mask passes out from lack of oxygen and crashes into a pole.
Oh, boy.
Police say the driver had been wearing an N95 mask inside the vehicle for several hours. And this story was posted yesterday. It was Lincoln Park, New Jersey. They wrecked their car after their oxygen mask or their N95 mask cut off their oxygen supply to the point where they passed out and hit a telephone pole.
I bet they're going to sue the state now. I'll bet you.
You know what? I hope they do. But the problem is, with these judges, and there's the issue. A lot of the judges have not come down favorably on people who have challenged this stuff. So this is really a problem when you don't seem to have any remedy. And
well, you know what? I'm wondering about that. If this whole thing isn't because of the U.S. participation in the WHO, and the protocols that are supposed to be followed if and when, whatever happens. Because when I was working on the issue of of a Hague Treaty being included in state law, I tracked down the Hague Convention and read it and read the protocols for application of for using the convention and all of that, and it's a pretty tight system, of how you're supposed to go about applying the convention and working within the convention. Responsibilities for participating in the convention. So I'm wondering, even though that Tedros didn't declare it a pandemic, if the protocols in the convention that we are participating in with the WHO didn't call for these measures to be taken.
I think the reason
in the event of a pandemic,
Tedros didn't declare it a pandemic is because they were speculating on these things. They were selling what was it called? Bonds? There were some kind of bonds that the World Bank was selling. And if a pandemic happened during that time, whatever time frame it was, then the bondholders wouldn't get their payout. I think we talked about that on the show. You remember?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But all of that would be separate from the protocols which spell out. So once the CDC determined that it was a pandemic in the United States, and Trump called it, then the protocols go into effect, even aside from Tedros.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep. Well, anyway, I don't know. I mean, I have every reason to believe they intend to further along their plan for world government. There is no question about that in my mind. And a part of that world government plan, of course, is, Codex Alimentarius certainly comes to mind. They can't promote vitamins and that sort of thing. And we're almost up to the break already. But it's remarkable to me. I guess I'll hold this for after the break. But a medical clinic here in Michigan was just raided by the FBI, Vicky. You want to know? Now, the FBI's been kind of cagey about what the perceived or supposed violation is. But from what I'm hearing in this report, it sounds to me like they were really trying to heal their people, their patients. And some of the treatments that they were giving. And, the problem is that when you have all your institutions, and this is what's wrong, ladies and gentlemen, with public-private partnerships, is when you have your governmental institutions that are working hand in glove with corporations, and especially big multinational corporations, you have basically a mafia-style gang-up against anybody who would go against that profit margin. That's another problem.
Put that on a plaque and put it on the wall, because that is the truth.
Yeah, it's a mafia type of system. And nobody dare go against it, or you're going to run afoul and you will have all kinds of problems. Anyway, let's go ahead and take the bottom of the hour break. We'll come back in a moment. This is Govern America. Stay with us.
Where the spooks go to find out what's really going on. This is Govern America.
Welcome back to the broadcast. This is Govern America. GovernAmerica.com is the website for the show. That's GovernAmerica.com. My email address is radio@GovernAmerica.com. That's radio@GovernAmerica.com. Vicky, you want to give your information out, please?
Yeah, my website is thetechnocratictyranny.com, and my email address is eyeswideoopen @channelingreality. And channelingreality.com is my old website. So, yep. And I have them cross-linked so you can get from one to the other.
All right, very good. We're talking about some of the stuff that's been going on with regard to this quarantine situation. And, to be honest with you, I'm really tired of COVID-19 and coronavirus and all this other nonsense. Unfortunately, since the whole country is locked down still as a result of it, and they're talking about letting us have some of our freedoms back. Oh, boy, isn't it very nice and generous, our gracious monarch hosts that are so wonderful. Their excellencies are working to restore some of our freedoms. They're working on those decrees. But in the meantime, we're seeing medical facilities raided by the FBI. And you're going to love the reason why, Vicky.
It is the first of its kind since the start of the pandemic. The FBI conducting a raid in hazmat suits at a Shelby Township medical clinic. They're accused of using a fake treatment for coronavirus patients and even putting those patients in danger inside the clinic. The raid happened at the Allure Medical Spa on 26 Mile Road near Van Dyke. 7 Action News reporter Jim Kurtzner is out there with more.
So just to give you an idea, this place is in southeast Michigan.
It was a special setup
for a medical spa.
It is what it is. I know nothing about this place.
Yeah, that's a little weird. Okay, go ahead, though.
All right.
It was a special setup for this raid, with the FBI putting on PPE as they went inside this medical clinic with a search warrant, seeking medical records and physical evidence.
The investigation includes allegations that the clinic provided fraudulent treatments for COVID-19 and that the clinic did not observe proper protocols to protect patients and staff from the virus.
The FBI spokesperson would not say what specific treatment they were investigating, except to say it was on the clinic website. And we found this posting, We have been using intravenous vitamin C therapy to treat COVID-19 and non-hospitalized patients with great results. The founder of Allure Medical is Dr. Charles Moak. Our efforts to reach the doctor today were not successful. It's not known how many patients may have gotten the vitamin C COVID-19 treatment or how many patients may have been exposed to COVID-19 in the clinic.
If any patients or staff have concerns about their health or exposure to COVID-19, we urge them to contact a trusted healthcare provider immediately.
The marquee name on this building is McLaren Medical, but McLaren says the clinic just rents space. The FBI also has on the scene Health and Human Services in what is called the first-of-its-kind raid during the pandemic.
They're part of our healthcare fraud task force, so they're assisting us in this investigation.
The FBI says this investigation continues. No one has been taken into custody. In Shelby Township, Jim Kurtzner, 7 Action News.
Okay, so.
Well, that's kind of...
vitamin C.
I understand why they might have done that, but I don't see that vitamin C. I don't know.
This is obvious.
That seems really weird.
You hit on it right there. A medical spa that implies massage and alternative therapies, alternative points of view, and something I cut from the story, which maybe I should have left in now that we've had this discussion, is the fact that one of the doctor they're talking about did appear on their Channel 7 News and said that, because he was pushing a book which helped women with, I think menopause cramps or something like that. Or no, it wasn't cramps. It was menopause symptoms, problems.
Hot flashes,
various symptoms according to menopause anyway. And so the whole thing was about alternative therapies, not, your establishment medical things. They're they try. In other words, the impression I get from this place, and I don't know, like I say, I don't know anything more about it than the story, but from my understanding, it looks to me like that they are genuinely trying to help people, and they ran afoul of the institutions that be, the dictatorships that be, because they were trying to use vitamin C to cure people.
And the fact that he said, it was reported that he said it was a cure. As a doctor, he should have known better than to say that.
Yeah, maybe he did. Yeah, I'll bet you that's it. Mm-hmm. But a cure is a cure. I mean,
if it's a
vitamin
cure,
C is a cure. It does help people get over colds and coughs and flus. But
help you to get over it.
But I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying not making a medical claim.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want the FBI busting my door down.
I knew that, but probably the FBI didn't.
Anyway, the whole thing is it's a tyranny. It's a tyranny. We're living in a day and age where people who cure cancer will have their licenses revoked and their doors kicked in if they persist. There have been people who have actually had to flee the country.
Let's look at this from the point of view of Big Pharma.
Yeah.
If you cure something, Big Pharma goes out of business, right?
Yeah.
And so you never, ever want to cure anything. You just want to keep people, at a certain level where they're functional.
Yeah.
But that
barely.
They are dependent upon the drug companies to keep them going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, and it's a perfectly great incestuous relationship, public-private partnership-wise, because the Big Pharma wants the big money, and there's big money in stringing people along health-wise, and big government wants people sickly, because it's a whole lot easier to control them when they're not in good health and able to fight back.
Yeah, well, and besides, then they won't complain about, what kind of crappy job they have and not having a good job. And, they can be just, if they're kind of sickly, then they can be kind of dismissed. So it's really useful, for the Federal Reserve and the federal government in terms of having enough jobs for people in this globalized system where you export your productive capacity, leaving no jobs for your own people.
Yeah. So it's a messed up situation. Tell you what, we're going to call on the line. And, folks, you're welcome to join in if you want. 610-600-1776 is the number. That's 610-600-1776. Or toll-free 844-6-GOVERN. That's 844-646-8376. We're going to go to Kentucky, I believe, and talk to Dan. Dan, you're on the air.
Darren, Vicky, good morning.
Hi, good morning to you.
Got the email I sent you this morning. It's from an Israeli scientist named Yitzhak Ben Israel in Tel Aviv. And in that study, he has studied all the virus data from the developed countries. And it doesn't make any difference if they quarantine or not, if they lock down or not. Israel locked down, Italy didn't. The viruses are all the same. It's the life cycle of the virus.
Yeah.
He said he doesn't know why, but the virus has a life of 6 to 8 weeks, a height of infections at 4 weeks, and it's over. And that is a fantastic article because in that he has graphs of each one of the countries, and it makes no difference. Now, Italy, they say in the article, was a special case because their health system is crap and they didn't take care of people, and a lot of people had the flu. And all of this is, he said, the virus is its own cycle, and there is no reason for any kind of quarantine. I emailed this to the White House because that's what it said. But Fauci has all kinds of dirt on him, all kinds of pharmaceutical connections, and I just wanted people to be aware of that fact because we always have to be on the offensive against evil, and there's all the difference in the world in us saying, well, we're concerned about the virus, but we have the Constitution, and why are you governors made kings taking jobs away from Americans when the data proves that the virus has a life cycle and the quarantines and lockdowns didn't do any good? They might have done good at the beginning, but of course you had de Blasio telling people to go to the Chinese New Year parade, you had Mardi Gras, you had inept make-it-happen procedures that didn't quarantine people, did not take care of the vulnerable people who were open to the flu and other kinds of things anyway. So this whole thing is tyranny, and I think the Democrats and the Republicans both need to be nailed on this thing.
I agree.
Offensively attacking this.
Well, absolutely, and they need to be held accountable. Everybody needs to vote them out of office, if you can even have a vote, because they're talking about mail-in ballots now. So, there's all kinds of room for mischief.
That in Idaho. I'm not going to participate because the whole thing is a fraud.
It is a fraud. It is a fraud, but
they count them Stalin.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
But the problem is
here we're supposed to send in our ballots to an administration that imposed a constitutional violation on all of their citizens by imposing lockdown. Basically, we're all under house arrest.
Right.
I mean,
That's exactly right.
There is nothing in the Idaho Constitution that gives the governor the ability to put everybody under house arrest without due process.
The only problem I have is that if everybody drops out because the system is a fraud, then we've guaranteed that the incumbents, they've already won at that point.
They've already won anyway. I don't see any difference between the Democrats and the Republicans in terms of programs.
Yeah, but don't you think there should be consequences for people locking down the country and overtly taking away your freedoms? I mean,
I do, but my voting is not going to do that. Only the Department of Justice can do that.
Well, good luck with that one.
And I did see an interview with Laura Ingraham, where at least the headline on the video said that Barr would consider bringing bringing a lawsuit against the governors who did this, who did give the lockdown orders.
Really?
Yeah. But I
seems...
kind of got distracted and I didn't listen closely to the story.
What was the source on it?
It was Fox News, an interview with Laura Ingraham with Bill Barr.
That's hard to believe because these governors were acting upon advice from the presidential administration, the same administration Barr is, serving in.
But I also heard Trump say that he left it up to the governors. So it was the call of the governors.
Right. It was the call of the governors, and he's done a lot of saber rattling, as we were talking last week, that if the governors don't cooperate, he can take action, and I've got absolute power and all this other nonsense. I
watched this really interesting video that showed Trump talking at various times, and he says the opposite things at different times, different things at different times.
Yes, he does.
So you can, if you're a news person, you can pick your clip. If you're on the left, you can pick a clip where he's saying something that you want to oppose, or if you're on the right, you can do the same thing because he says both things at different times.
Yeah, well, this is why a long time ago, if you go back into the archives, I labeled him Double Agent Donald because this is precisely it. I mean, you don't quite know which Donald you're going to get at any given time. But
will the real Donald please stand up?
Yeah, well, I don't even know if he knows which one that is.
He may not, actually.
But Dan mentioned Fauci, and I think now would be a good time to do this. Fauci gave a speech at Georgetown, which was uploaded to YouTube on February 14, 2017, by Georgetown.
Darren.
Yes.
Darren, I have a question, and then I'll get off because you're going to do Fauci, but. I'm blind, and somebody told me that the presidential seal is no longer on the podium when Trump speaks, and Fox News has their cover below it, where they put running tapes and
their banner
stuff.
Lower third, yep.
Whatever, yeah. Does anybody know, or can somebody verify whether that presidential seal was on or not on his podium? The other thing is Scott Tips of National Health Federation has gone into a promotion and promoting vitamin D for the virus too. And also you had Murr and John in California and Wisconsin talking the possible vitamin C can be modified so it does not change the narrow range around 7.4 alkali for the blood. So it is a good thing to use, the possible vitamin C. It's just as good or better than the intravenous injections.
Okay.
And thanks for everything.
Just to answer your question, Dan, which is very easy, yes, the presidential seal is still there. Now, I can't speak...
It is. I've seen it where he's speaking and it's not there.
Well, it probably depends.
Hey, so is he saying things at one time that aren't valid or legal, and then when it is on, he is?
Well, I can tell you that he held a press conference a week ago at the Rose Garden, and it was there.
But for all these COVID conferences that are in the press room, it's not there.
Well, yeah, in the press room, maybe they don't have it there during the press room. But a lot of times presidents don't give news conferences in the press room. Normally, that's the press secretary. So maybe that's the reason why. I don't know. I don't get too lost in these, seals and, I mean, I try to stick to what I can know.
Well, you know what, though? I kind of do.
Thanks.
Because protocol is important.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Protocol is important.
It is. And I'm not trying to, gloss over it or say that it's... The problem is, how do you get to the bottom of it? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
There's no way to get to the bottom of it.
If you ask about it, they dismiss you as some kind of a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist.
Which
I'm used to that. But
there's nothing wrong with conspiracy theory, and that's what I think all of us need to start defending on that ground. That was something I think the CIA came up with to try to discredit people. And I always say, who are the biggest conspiracy theorists that exist? They're the cops. FBI agents. Let's just start there. The FBI is the biggest conspiracy theorists around. They come up with, in order to solve crimes, you have to form a theory based upon the evidence, right? So what they're doing is no different than what we do. We look at evidence and we form a theory and we try to either discount it or substantiate it.
Fortunately for all of them, we don't have arrest authority. If we did, there would be hell to pay.
The people, unfortunately, have lost their ability, largely, to consent or not to consent. I do believe that if they stood up united with enough numbers, they would still be able to push back effectively. Unfortunately, you've got so many clowns going along, so many conned people, so many people who just believe everything. If it's on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News, hey, it must be true. And I'm trying to tell people all the time, you got to turn those stupid things off. Just turn it off. All they're doing is scaring the hell out of you. All they're doing is they're lying to you, poisoning your mind every single day.
Yeah, which reminds me, just before we came on air, I watched a video by Millennial Millie, and what she was talking about was operatives on the internet that actually work towards manipulating your perception of reality. And the link will be in the show notes, and I really recommend that everybody watch it because it's a good report, and what she's saying is absolutely true. And what got me started researching things to begin with was cognitive dissonance between the way that I perceived the world in real life and the world that I was seeing on the internet. And, because in my world, as a former computer programmer, I live in a world of true or false. Is something true or is it false? And so I set about to find out what was true because what I was seeing on the internet wasn't making any sense in terms of the way I perceived our country and the world to be. Mm-hmm. And so it's really very good, and I recommend that you watch it.
Yeah, outstanding. I was just going to go to this Fauci speech. I don't know if you heard this or not, but after we got off the air last week, and it seems like it always happens that way too. I find things, or people send me things or something, and it's like Sunday. I'm like, doggone it, it's a whole week before I get to talk about this. And this is one of those cases where he gave a speech at Georgetown, February. It was up, as I said, it was up. I don't know the date of the speech. I'm assuming it's near there, but it was uploaded February 14th, 2017. The speech was called Pandemic Preparedness in the Next Administration. In it, he had a remarkable prediction, especially in light of everything. It was almost too remarkable.
The idea that we are now a few days away from a new administration obviously prompted the really extraordinary, very enjoyable, and I'm really pleased I had the opportunity to listen to the panel, both of Amy and Ron, and as well as Bill and Dr. Jafari, which really, I think, set the stage for so many of the things that we are going to be dealing with over the coming years. Given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak. And I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation you will understand why history, the history of the last 32 years that I've been the director of NIAID, will tell the next administration that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that they will be faced with the challenges that their predecessors were faced with.
What do you think of that?
Pretty prescient, except that they started building this pandemic system. Let's see, I think during George W. Bush administration. And of course, when you build a system, you have to system test it. And because our world has gotten so insane, they do what it effectively is street theater. They plan out scenarios, and they execute on those scenarios. And I think last week we talked about the exercise Dark Winter.
I don't recall Dark Winter.
Isn't it Dark Winter?
Well, we've been previous broadcasts. We talked about Exercise 201. I think it was Pandemic Exercise 201. Dark Winter doesn't
ring a bell. Well, Dark Winter was around 2001, and it was short. It was in like June of 2001, and they had the whole thing scripted out, including parts for the media to play, and let's see, Sam Nunn played the part of the president, and they have a whole big scenario. Well, if you take that concept where you're doing a
Vicky,
realistic...
we gotta go to hold your thoughts, keep your thoughts in place. We have to go to the break real quick, and we'll be back. We'll continue right where she left off. Stay with us, folks. This is Govern America. Don't go away.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order. New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order.
A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
The councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is Govern America. I'm Darren Weeks. Vicky Davis is here as well. It continues to be the 25th of April, 2020, as we get right back into the show here. And I wanted to go right back to where Vicky was speaking, and I had to rudely interrupt her. Go ahead, Vicky. Continue your thoughts, please.
Okay, yeah. Well, there was a live drill, and it was run out of Andrews Air Force Base in June of 2001. And I have the briefing and the, an overview of what it was about. But what the subject of it was Smallpox Strikes America. Dark Winter was an exercise designed to simulate possible U.S. reaction to the deliberate introduction of smallpox in 3 states during the winter of 2002.
Wow.
Okay, now the organizations that were involved in this, Dark Winter was developed and produced by the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, D.C., the Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Studies, and Answer Institute for Homeland Security. And they did, I said the president during this was Sam Nunn, but they also had news people. The National Security Advisor was played by David Gergen, and the governor of Oklahoma was the Honorable Frank Keating. Health and Human Services was played by Margaret Hamburg. Secretary of State was played by Frank Wisner. One that was really interesting to me was the director of FEMA was played by Jerry Hauer, is what they called him, but his name is Jerome Hauer. And during the 2001 9/11 incident, Jerome Hauer was one of the first people on the TV news saying that it was Osama bin Laden.
Wow. Yeah, I don't remember this. And I was pretty well paying attention back in those days. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah,
but they do have these exercises all the time.
Right. Okay. Now,
apparently,
if you take this concept and you have your major players, you've got your government people, you have your news media people, you have the scenario written by somebody, you could develop a system that you could activate that would set the scenario rolling and play it out real time. And that's really what I think Millennial Millie was talking about with this perceived reality versus real reality. If they can create a perceived reality, because, honestly, we don't, out here in the country, we really don't know what's true or not true about something that happens in some city. Like the Oklahoma City Murrah building, for example. Mm-hmm. It supposedly was blown up by a small truck worth of filled with
explosives.
Fertilizer material. Mm-hmm. Well, do we know that that's true? There's a lot of people that say it isn't true, that was the real story.
Yeah.
But they played it out as if it was true.
Sure. And they still do.
Yeah. And
the narrative is that's what caused it.
So that's because we were conditioned to trust our official. When they lie to us, we have no way of knowing, at least initially, we have no way of knowing that they are fooling us. After they've done it so many times and so many mistakes have been revealed, then you finally understand that
you can't believe a word they say.
There's a game being played.
Yeah.
There's a game being played against the people of the country, and that it's a dialectic.
Uh-huh.
And
that's it right there. I mean, and to any new listeners, when she's talking about a dialectic, that is an argument. And what we're talking about here is an argument for change, because the Hegelian dialectic is I've said before, it's the way all change happens today. Social engineering is what it really is. You present an argument, and it's whatever problem, whatever crisis scenario type of situation, and there's a myriad of ways to do it, but you present a problem and you present your own opposition to the problem, and through that conflict, you come out with some kind of solution, some kind of synthesis to the thesis and antithesis, and ultimately that synthesis becomes the foundation upon which society will now have the new reality. And the process keeps repeating over and over again. But that synthesis has moved society from the original point, from the original thesis. And this is why, everybody needs to understand that, when they say we're not ever going back to the way that normal, that as you've known it, they say that we're not, we have a new normal now. That's exactly what they're talking about. They have shifted society in a particular direction, and it is a direction toward totalitarian control. But it's that process playing out that has moved society. I think you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, and that's exactly the situation that we're living through now with this alleged COVID-19 pandemic that doesn't really seem to be. And we've seen a lot of video and stories about it not being true in all areas. And, if it was a real pandemic, we would all know it. We would know it.
And the thing is that, as you said, it's difficult to know what's true and what's not true. But, a lot of stuff is anecdotal, both ways. Both for and against it being a real crisis or a big crisis, and the problem is, but what I look at is the fact that they're artificially inflating the numbers, and that's provable. And that's why I hammer that, because why would the CDC put out a document telling the hospitals to include COVID-19 when it isn't proven on the death certificates? That is artificially manipulating the numbers to make the situation look worse than it really is. And why would they be including and talk about anecdotal evidence? I mean, my goodness, there's a sea of that. There's an ocean of that. Michelle's on Facebook. I'm not. But she sees constantly these stories being posted from people outraged that their loved ones who died are being considered COVID-19 patients and COVID-19 casualties. There's way too many of these stories being posted, Vicky, by ordinary people for it to be just anecdotal anymore. I mean, it is. She's always telling me about these things, and they're all over the place. More and more people everywhere are losing loved ones for one reason or another, and for some reason they find out, what the heck? The doctor put COVID-19. It wasn't COVID-19 that killed them.
Right. And if it was a real pandemic, they wouldn't have to lie. They wouldn't have to lie about the statistics.
Exactly.
So if logical analysis of everything that's going on in every area that you can possibly look at reveals the truth, about what's going on. And I'll tell you something I really haven't talked much about. I haven't talked to anybody about it, except, just a couple people around me. But when that whole Bundy Ranch thing, or not the Bundy Ranch, but the Oregon thing was going on.
I'm out here.
I had a guy approach me. He had just been to Sun Valley, and he wanted me to let him write the stories about what was going on at Burns, Oregon.
Huh.
He was a fiction writer, and he had just signed a deal with Disney.
Uh-oh.
And he called me every day for about 3 weeks. And wanting me to turn over the story to him, as if I'm not gonna. He wanted to write
basically
everything.
Sell your rights to your own story, your own experiences.
Well, I didn't care about that, but I did care about the truth of what was going. I mean, if he would have written stories and given them to me to publish, I would have if they were true. But he wanted me out of it, and he wanted to write them.
It's almost like they were trying to shut you up, and this is a roundabout way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, so I know that there are people out there on the internet who write fictional accounts. There's some truth in what they write, and then they throw in misleads or disinformation and do it.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah, so in terms of this whole exercise that they set up a scenario for change management, that seems to be the way our country is going. We have entered a time period when fiction becomes the reality. The fiction as they present it to you becomes the reality.
Yeah, that's true. Reality and fiction are being blurred together. It is remarkable, but that's where we are. The narrative is what has to be upheld, and if you go against the narrative, prepare to pay.
Right, they've got to destroy you, basically.
Yeah, if you get too much traction, especially. And this is why we're seeing so much censorship on so-called social media, which I really would think more adequately would be called anti-social media, because what it really does is separate people socially, which seems to be the goal for everything today, social distancing, right? That's what the term of the day is.
If you're close to people, then you get to care about them, and then, you want to share what you know, they want to share what they know, and between the two of you, or how many of you there are, you can sift through and figure out the truth.
It's a lot harder to call
that's
somebody
something that doesn't fit into the New World Organization.
It's a lot harder to call somebody an SOB to their face.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
But you can do it behind that keyboard, buddy. You can do it behind the keyboard. Well, we have another day, another protest here in Michigan. Operation Queen's Castle commenced in Michigan on Thursday. This was a protest. I almost went to it, too. I had prior commitments, so that's the only reason I didn't. I would have loved to have been there, though.
You're going to go to a Queen's?
The Queen's Castle, yeah. I mean,
the Queen's
she
Castle.
has a state-funded mansion that most governors who are elected governors, our last one didn't live there, but most of them do. And this is in Lansing, and so a lot of the protesters gathered out there.
Not nearly as big as the protest a week ago at the state capitol. Nevertheless, a spirited group, not favorable to Governor Gretchen Whitmer, on Thursday decided to take their complaints and protest to her house and called it Operation Queen's Castle.
It is a castle. It's a gated, walled castle.
It's also where every governor has lived since William Milliken, except Governor Snyder, who worked from his home in Ann Arbor. But getting back to the protest.
We wanted to send Gretchen Whitmer a message. We don't want to surrender our civil liberties just for a little temporary safety.
The theme of the protest? People who can work without putting others in danger should.
Governor, please stay home, stay safe, and open Michigan back up now.
Younger people, healthy people, in businesses where we can go to work and do our jobs without putting anybody else in danger, including ourselves, we should be allowed to go back to work.
Were you following social distancing rules?
Absolutely. I had gloves on and an N95 mask.
Well, you be the judge. I'm told that there will be another rally on April 30th, the day the governor's stay-at-home order expires. In Lansing, Charlie Langton, Fox 2 News.
Okay, so anyway, that was the so they gathered out there, and it was like he said, so a relatively small crowd, but they went out there to make some noise, and hey, more power to them. That's what I say. Now we are going to have another another protest on April 30th, and I will be at that one. And I think it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, if I'm not mistaken. I'm a little unsure on the time. But, that's the thing. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
I know there are some more protests in the planning for Idaho, too.
Yeah, great. Great.
Yeah,
there's got to be pushback. There's got to be pushback. And people say, well, they're just going to extend the stay-at-home. You know what? They're going to do what they're going to do anyway. The point is people need to push back.
This to be
unchallenged.
The new normal.
That's right.
Or even any loss of our civil liberties, constitutional rights, to be lost through this scenario they have cooked up.
California is banning people from being on state property now because of the protests out there. I mean, it's
a mother in Meridian was arrested. Now they say she wasn't arrested for the pandemic. She was arrested because the park was closed. Well, the park was closed because they supposedly had it quarantined, but they didn't. But it doesn't fit the description of quarantine according to the law.
Yeah.
It was just one of those magic wand things. You can't take your children to the park.
Yeah.
Even though, there was a whole group of mothers who had their children at the park. And so, I don't know. It's just despicable to me that
outrageous.
They're doing this to children.
Well,
this is even worse than what they did when I was a kid, which was the duck and cover.
Oh, yeah.
Scenarios.
It's duck and cover all over again, except with a very unique twist. You're not allowed to go outside your house in some cases. In some places, you get arrested for going outside. I mean, that is just absolutely nuts. And what is sunlight is the best disinfectant, by the way.
Absolutely. Fresh air and sunshine.
Speaking of disinfectants, oh my gosh. This ridiculous controversy over what Trump said recently at his press briefing. Have you been following that at all? He came out.
Only a little bit.
They said, here's the comment, okay? The media is making a big deal over this. He asked the doctors something about how, because they were talking about ultraviolet. And some guy did a presentation, one of their experts did a presentation on how they've been experimenting with various things to kill the virus. And, Trump asked a question of the team there as to whether or not, what would be the likelihood that you could actually take the ultraviolet light inside a person and somehow kill the virus, clean them out, whatever, and he, he's just kind of brainstorming. He says, what about disinfectants? Because they were talking about disinfectants. And he says, what about, maybe injecting them into people, and immediately you think, well, he wants to inject bleach or he wants to inject household cleaners into people. But there are many, many disinfectants. They don't have to be chemically based. There are, white vinegar kills germs. Hydrogen peroxide kills germs. I mean, there are things that could be done potentially, and it was just a question. He wasn't asking. He wasn't a statement. This is how it went, real quick.
Phil, a question that probably some of you are thinking of if you're totally into that world, which I find to be very interesting. So, supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting.
We'll get the right folks who could.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
So that's what the basically the comment that everybody's up in a frenzy over, and it as many stupid things as Joe Biden has said, I think we can forgive one or two, questionable things Donald Trump says.
I was just going to say that, he should just really stay away from those subjects where you actually have to have some knowledge of what you're talking about.
Well, he was asking the team. He was asking the team if they can look into it or if they were going to look into it. But maybe he shouldn't do that in front of all these reporters. And I think his style is such that he's trying to be transparent, and he's showing, and there's a certain amount of showboating going on, A
little bit of brainstorming.
Yeah, a little brainstorming. When we're doing it all openly in front of the press, who is nothing but hostile. But yeah, I mean, he's going to pay the price for that one too. That'll be another one in the campaign ad, probably. Anyway.
Well, the one disinfectant that they missed was alcohol. Alcohol is, of course, a disinfectant. Yes. So everybody go out and buy a bottle of
bottle of vodka. Booze it up, people, for the coronavirus, of course.
Right.
Anyway.
Medicinal purposes. I've heard that before, by the way.
Yeah, well, and there are medicinal purposes to it. And I'm not condoning alcohol, but, it in certain cases it has, I've never had a drink in my life, and I haven't missed it. I'm happy I haven't. But, and my dad was an alcoholic. For years he was, in fact, he called into the show drunk one time.
Oh, nice.
Was hitting on Nancy when she was co-hosting, and I had to cut him off. So it was a little embarrassing, but, we got through it. The point is, though, I didn't mean to digress. Well, I think I made my point. Anyway, let's move on.
Were you going to play a clip of Fauci?
I did. I thought I did play that clip.
No, you didn't. I don't think you did.
Yeah, it was the Georgetown thing.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, remember
The idea that we are now a few days away from a new administration obviously prompted the really extraordinary, very enjoyable, and I'm really pleased I had the opportunity.
This is the one where
to listen to the panel, that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that. But also there will be a surprise outbreak, and I hope by the end of my relatively short presentation.
Okay, that was the clip.
Oh, okay, all right.
Surprise outbreak. Yeah. Surprise! How would he know that? How would he know that if it wasn't
I just
planned?
Can't hear too much about COVID-19.
It's one thing to say there could be a surprise outbreak. It's another thing to say there will be. There will be. How do you know? Is the man? Is he a prophet? Is he a prophet? I don't know. You tell me.
A planner.
A planner.
I would say.
And that gives credence to those who say this is a planned-demic. Anyway. So Gretchen, I almost said, Gretchen Whitmer. That's our governor, our monarch, our queen. Queen Whitmer held a press conference extending the stay-at-home order. She also decreed people must wear face masks.
Today I'm taking action to further protect Michigan families from the spread of this virus and to ensure that when people leave the house, they are being safe. I signed an executive order this morning to extend the stay home, stay safe order through May 15th. The order I signed today requires that everyone wear a covering over their nose and mouth when they are in an enclosed public space. If you're in an outdoor area, this order doesn't require that you wear one, but you should consider it anyway. Under the order, no one will be subject to criminal penalty for going without a mask.
Oh, nice.
But a face covering is crucial to protecting the public and our critical employees. And for now, N95 masks need to be reserved for those on the front lines. In addition, all businesses must provide non-medical grade masks and face coverings to their employees who work outside the home. While this order is extended to May 15th.
Now think about that requirement right there. if you're a business, where are you going to get these masks? All of a sudden, she's just said, you got to do this. Where are you going to get these masks? Now you've got the burden of trying to find something to provide your employees to keep yourself from getting arrested. Otherwise, I guess you just shut down if you can't find them.
I am lifting some of the restrictions.
Oh, how generous.
The new executive order will now allow some workers to perform.
This whole dictatorial thing just really pisses me off.
Absolutely, me too.
Where do they get off thinking that they have the power to do this? They do not have the authority to do this.
In the case of our governor, the legislature granted her emergency powers decades ago, and this is the problem. Now they're meeting in Lansing to try to rescind some of these powers. The problem is they have to have a 2/3 of the legislature united against it, because she's going to veto the thing. She's already said she will veto it, of course. And so
they should
if they can't override her veto,
they should vote on it anyway, because then you know who are the traitors to the Constitution and who are the loyal, patriotic members of the legislature.
Yeah.
The idea of waiting to vote until you're sure it can pass, that's not really very helpful. Because what you need to know is, among your legislators, who are the ones that are loyal and faithful to the Constitution and who isn't.
Well, nobody should have ever gone along with this, whether in or out of the legislature to begin with. But the problem is people don't ask questions. They in an era of expediency. See, whenever they present you with, oh my gosh, it's going to be the end of the world, our hair is on fire, this is a really big problem, and the Constitution is not a suicide pact. How many times did we hear that after 9/11? The Constitution is not a suicide pact. We have to deal with the enemy. Well, folks, if you're going to think that way, you're always going to have an enemy. The problem is the person pointing their finger at the supposed enemy is the enemy.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
More times than not. But anyway, she continues.
Lower risk activities to go back on the job. We will consider this the preliminary stage of economic reengagement. We will measure, we will collect data, we will continue to ramp up our testing, our tracing, and we will make informed decisions in the coming days about potential further economic reengagement. But it depends on you. Mm-hmm. If we continue to see our numbers decline, we can responsibly consider additional steps we can take. If we see an increase, we may have to be nimble enough to go backward on occasion.
So there you go. This is not ever going away. This is your new normal.
Yeah, that sounded to me like she's planning on keeping it going.
Yes.
So people of Michigan...
They are. And it's not just the people of Michigan.
They should start the recall petitions right now.
Well, they already have. They're not, and I say some of these protests, that's where the recall needs to be. The recall petitions, because you're not going to do this on websites. You're not going to do this on Facebook pages. You have to have something that is admissible and provable, and it really needs to be on paper. It needs to be done the right way. So, furthermore, Her Majestic Excellency has granted the people of Michigan some tentative resumption of activities.
This order allows landscapers and lawn service companies and nurseries to return to work, subject to strict social distancing. That means that they should have limited contact with clients. Workers should have the personal protection equipment that they need, like gloves, goggles, and masks as appropriate. Where they are using shared tools or machinery, extra sanitation efforts must be taken. Today's order permits retailers that do not sell necessary supplies to open for curbside pickup or for delivery. The order lifts the closed areas that have been that were ruled closed at big box stores. So we will allow garden supplies and centers to reopen. And we allow bike repair shops to open their doors as well. We are now prepared to ease up on some of the personal restrictions. These are changes that public health experts say are lower risk. So specifically, we are permitting motorized boating.
Okay, now real quick on the motorized boating thing. Before they had, she had in her infinite majestic wisdom had permitted boating, but you could only paddle boating. You couldn't have a motor on your boat. Now go figure that one out. You could go boating, but you don't use a motor. If you use a motor, you're in violation and can be fined.
That woman needs to be run out of our country, and that's the nicest thing I can think to say
now
that needs to happen to her.
In her infinite monarch wisdom, she has granted the serfs, the peasants, the ability to have a motor on their boat.
Also, golf, consistent with strict social distancing. You may not, however, operate golf carts at this time. Michiganders may travel between their residences, but I still strongly discourage people from doing so.
So there's your micromanagement. You know, and I'm using Michigan. The reason it's where I live, for one thing, but I would not probably spend so much time on Michigan, except that this clown has made national news at how arbitrary and...
Yeah, I understand that. We have a clown in Idaho too, so I understand.
It's a perfect example of your technocratic future, people. Now, the legislature here in Michigan is currently meeting to take away some of her emergency powers, as I said. That fact was also addressed by the governor.
The political conversation that is happening in the Capitol right now is not something that I'm spending a lot of energy on, because I'll tell you, every unnecessary trip out of the house, every unnecessary close contact with another person threatens to continue spreading COVID-19. I find it odd that the legislature has chosen to congregate against all the best practices, against the spirit of the stay home, stay safe order, where the vast majority of their constituents are observing these important actions. And I think that they should be focused on making sure that people who've lost their jobs have access to health care if they're doing anything together. I think that they should be focused on paid sick leave if they are determined to congregate in Lansing. That would be a wonderful use of their energy if they are going to congregate and do all this. So with regard to any of the blatantly political...
They can congregate?
No, she's talking about the legislature.
Oh, okay.
She's bitching and moaning about the fact that the legislature is meeting to try to rescind her emergency powers, and she said they would be better. Their time would be better spent if they insist on violating my orders. It would be better spent pushing my agenda, of course. But
I was lost in the thought that biatch needs to be exported to communist China.
Well, you know what? Why do that when she's trying to make communist China here? But the thing is
well, she belongs over there, though. We're not going to have communist China here.
How dare the legislature meet and try to take away my powers? How dare they violate my orders and congregate? Are they, they're probably not wearing masks at the Capitol.
Somebody should, you know what?
She's not wearing a mask either, by the way. She's not wearing a mask.
All those protesters should send pictures of Marie Antoinette to her.
By the way, no mask for the governor. No mask for the sign language lady who's standing right beside her, by the way. Mm-hmm. And this governor has not been staying at home. She's been going all over the place, all over the creation. As a matter of fact, numerous trips to the Communication Arts and Sciences building on the campus of Michigan State University, where she has been had her mug all over MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, because she's trying desperately to raise her national profile. Hoping that Joe Biden will swoop her out of Michigan and onto the national stage. So this is the hypocrisy. And we had a call on the line. Just hang with me a little longer, caller. I'll just finish with this governor stuff, and we'll get right to
conversations about taking executive power away from my office. I'm just going to reiterate for I don't know how many, the upteenth time, I'm not going to sign any bill that takes authority away from me or from any future governor. The powers of the executive office are incredibly important, especially in times of crisis where lives are on the line. And I don't know that I've got much more to say on that.
Which is exactly why she shouldn't be abusing them, because they are important. But she is abusing her authority.
I think the Constitution is important. And I think nothing, and I don't care if we're in times of crisis or not, the Constitution stands, and the Constitution rules. To hell with her emergency powers, and you know what? I would rather fight this thing on my own and let the people decide what they are going to do to shield against it. You know, if we die, we die, but at least we die free. And that's the spirit everybody should have. I got one more clip. She asked about reopening. She was asked by a reporter about reopening manufacturing. Listen to this curt response.
Governor, it appears that your executive order doesn't have specific guidance on manufacturing. Is there anything in this that has any effect on things like auto assembly plants?
No.
There you go. Screw manufacturing.
Yeah.
We don't give a crap. So.
Unfortunate for the people that live in that state.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you what, let's go to the phones and let's talk to Sam in Missouri. Hello, you're on the air.
Hey, Darren and Vicky, good show as always. And my first question is, should I guess the next thing you'll be calling the governor's mansion to find out when you can go take a pee?
Well, that's just it. You know, I mean, she has dictated so much. I was thinking, you know, if she dictated everybody in the state wear a polka dot dress, you know, both male and female, I mean, how many people would comply with that? You know, we have to fight the...
That's a good question.
You know...
yeah.
I mean, when they can dictate whether or not you wear a face mask, I mean, they're dictating what you can wear. What you can wear. How much more personal are they going to dictate when men and women can go in their bedroom and, you know, fool around?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I mean,
I know.
I'm not trying to be vulgar here, but look, I mean, how much more personal are we going to get here?
Well, I know. And see, the thing that makes it so bad out of all this is that this, in the end, could cause more problems because you need to be exposed to different things to build up antibodies to it. If you're taking care of yourself and you can build up antibodies to it, I mean, basically, we're just hovering in fear over something that for most people is not going to be much more than just a variant of the common cold. In fact, somebody, I don't know if you can get him on your show or not, Darren, but I ran into a clip. If you go over to Next News Network, which is Gary Franchi's thing up on YouTube, he did an exclusive interview with a guy by the name of Dr. Rashid Buttar. I've known about Dr. Buttar for years because he's been on one of the shows that we carry here on Missouri Liberty Radio, but he's come out swinging against all this stuff and is even threatening lawsuits against a lot of people that have been causing problems here in this country. He's not a fly-by-night doctor. He's been around and has a lot of degrees, and you know, in medicine. Has been around for years. Did medicine in the military, and you know, his degrees are too numerous to mention here. But what I'm trying to say is that he's come out and called this out exactly what it is too, and apparently he has threatened to sue various agencies over a lot of this stuff, and I don't know where he's going to go with it. But he was on this show. He was particularly pissed during this one show, and once he got going. But here's the thing that was really bad about this particular interview. This Next News Network, which Gary Franchi runs, is up on YouTube. Okay, right. I don't know if YouTube is his only venue, but it is one of his major venues. During the course of that interview, Dr. Buttar brought up the issue of the possible issues involving 5G. Now, my verdict is still out on it. I'm not sure one way or the other. I know that the energy emitted from 5G towers, it certainly isn't good for you.
Right.
But in order to make that interview usable for YouTube, he had to bleep out anything having to do with 5G or
I heard about
with Corona.
And they still took it down.
Question is, my question is this, okay? If it's gotten that bad, then he must be over the target, because the time that they have to bleep stuff out. In fact, my attitude has been anymore, wherever they censor, that's where you should go to investigate.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of a role 5G plays in this thing. I kind of have my doubts about it, although I do know that some people do get sick from 5G.
Yeah.
But I frankly think most of this stuff is just ordinary seasonal flu, because it's being lumped. But it's probably, I'm sure, a hodgepodge of various different illnesses that are all being lumped in together into COVID-19. But
it was here in our county.
Yeah,
I called it out here in our county. I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, so and so came down with COVID-19 and all this kind of stuff," and I said, "What are their symptoms?"
And how do you know?
1 minute they were burning up with fever, and 1 minute they were chilled, and the next minute they were having diarrhea and all this kind of stuff. I said, "Well, that sounds more like the flu to me than it does the coronavirus."
Well, the coronavirus probably has some symptoms that are like that, but the ordinary flu is the coronavirus. That's the thing, and even testing. I've got audio here from Debbie Birx that we'll play in a moment later on that really, I think, basically clouds the whole testing idea. Because if I understand her correctly, and I'll play it for you guys so you all can hear it and make up your own minds, but as I understand it, she's really saying their tests aren't that effective.
I don't know how we went from tests where they basically had to go through your nostril, in under your eye socket, to take a sample of what, I have no idea. But how did they go from that to just a simple do-it-yourself at-home test?
It's called innovation. Innovation.
That makes no sense whatsoever. And that's the kind of logical flaw in what's being presented to us that I think reveals the whole thing is a scam. And as a scam, that makes our governors terrorists, I think. Well, I think that they are the terrorists.
They are terrorists.
I agree with
imposing fear on people.
With the exception of the handful that didn't lock their states down.
Mm-hmm.
The overwhelming majority...
Here's the thing to enter into the mix.
Go ahead.
Another thing to enter into the mix is that if you take the flu shot, your chances of testing positive go up just simply because part of the flu shot is the virus that would ordinarily come under the auspices of a coronavirus. So if you're one of those that takes the flu shot, you're increasing your chances of showing positive whether you have any symptoms or not. Now, me, I'm not going to take any vaccines. I'm done with that nonsense, because when I was in school years ago, every single time I would go in for the flu shot, because back at that time, we used to attend boarding schools. Trish and I both did, so we know communism real well, because that's pretty much what boarding schools are. And, of course, when you're a kid, you don't question anything. When they tell you to go to the infirmary, get a flu shot or something, you just went. Well, every single time I went, about 2 weeks after the time I went, I would come down with the flu every single time. When I got out of school and I quit going and getting flu shots, I no longer had the flu nearly as often as I did when I got the flu shots. And I haven't had the flu here so far, probably in about 6 or 7 years. So, it just goes to show you the stuff that we believe in. And this is why it's so important to do your research and find out how things really work, and you'll find out what they call health care in this country is not health care at all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that's
I agree totally with what you're saying.
Everybody that I know, same thing. I don't get flu shots. I never have. But everybody I know that has comes down with the flu. And I've pointed it out to them. Hey, guess what? Cause and effect. Cause and effect. Finally, I started having some of them come out to me and say, later on they would come back and say, I'm starting to think you might be onto something here. I'm like, well, you think so? After how many years have you been doing the same ritual and with the same result? Einstein famously said that, doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the very definition of insanity. How many times are you going to keep going on and getting these flu shots and thinking you're not going to get the flu? Now, some people, maybe they have a different outcome. I don't know. And then I hear arguments from people, well, yeah, I got the flu, but, you really ought to see how bad it would have been had I not gotten the shot. It would have really been bad.
Oh, man.
So
that is insanity.
I can fix ignorance. I can't fix stupidity.
I know. Well, keep in mind, guys, we may not be doctors, but we're one of the few out here that still have common sense. And, Darren, I don't know if it's still online or not, but I ought to go in there and look, see if I can find it. But there used to be a thing running around on the Internet, the obituary for common sense.
Yeah, that's very germane. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's all I got, guys.
Hey, thanks for the call, Sam. Talk to you later. Yep, Sam in Missouri. All right, well, let's move on. Let's go Washington State. Hello, Washington State. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
I'm in Washington State now.
Oh, it's you.
I really get around, man.
Yeah, you're a traveling man. So what's on your mind?
I'll tell you, calling into your broadcast is a whole lot faster than hitchhiking. I'll tell you what. Before I get to what I was going to say, I have to disagree with your analogy that the coronavirus is a flu, because actually it's not. I actually covered this on my broadcast and described using the medical definition of a coronavirus and an influenza, and they are, while they share similar symptoms, they are actually indeed two completely different things.
Okay.
And Dr. Brantfield, or whatever his name was, a few days ago, actually made the comment that in the winter we will be dealing with both the influenza and coronavirus, quote unquote.
And I guarantee you won't know the difference because they're going to lump them all together.
Yeah. For the purposes of the layperson, it doesn't really make any difference. If the symptoms are the same, it's the same.
If you die from the flu, they're going to chalk it up to COVID-19. So
there you go.
Anyway, you were talking about your dictator-in-chief out there in Michigan, and how she appears like she's trying to put herself out there to try to, get Biden to,
please pick me, Yeah.
Well, so is here in the great state of Georgia, the loser, Stacey Abrams, is doing the same thing, coming out attacking Governor Kemp on his supposed, trying to get Georgia back to work, although I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do social distancing at tattoo parlors and hair and nail salons and such things as that. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, and why he would let them open up before you do restaurants, as if those things are more important than putting food in your belly. I don't get it. And
hey, I need a haircut. It's important.
Yeah. And the restrictions he's put on restaurants, which will only allow them to be able to do 40% of their seating capacity, because everybody has to socially distance, which means no two people can sit at the same table, and tables that are too close together, well, one of those tables is going to be empty, and you see where that becomes a problem.
Yep.
Financially. Restaurant owners in my area are saying we're not even going to bother. It's just, why go groin deep in a cesspool when we can stay knee deep as we are right now? And lose, instead of losing $150,000 a month profit, not overall, but profit, we're only going to lose 65,000 profit, which makes a lot of sense to me. But Stacey Abrams is out there attacking Governor Kemp because of it's too early to think about going back to opening anything up. And
it'll always be too early. It'll always be too early.
Doing the same thing.
Everybody who says that are people that have enough money to get along. What about the people who are making like minimum wage and they're laid off and their employer's not keeping them on the payroll?
I would go a step further and say everybody that's saying that has something to gain by the shutdown.
Well, that's a good point. We don't know all of the incentives that come by way of the hand in the pocket.
The greasing of palms. Exactly.
Right, and you're talking waitresses and waiters that actually have to be in there. But, what Stacey Abrams is doing is not only is she attacking Governor Kemp, kind of like Trump is doing, but at the same time, she's out there, I'm most qualified to be vice president. I mean, she's vocally advocating as if she's trying to back Biden into a corner to pick her. And let's not forget, this is the same woman who actually admitted during her governor attempt to unseat Governor Kemp, she was the Democrat here in Georgia making comments about absolute total bans on the average American having weapons. Only law enforcement and military should have firearms, and it's a sorry shame when you have to resort to farming to make a living. Now, this is the woman we want for vice president, and here's something else to think about. How long do you actually think Joe Biden is actually going to last? I mean, the guy is obviously either onset dementia or Alzheimer's or something. He's not going to last long, so whoever is the vice president, God forbid he wins, that's your next president, ladies and gentlemen. You need to think about this one.
Yeah.
I don't. It wasn't Stacey Abrams involved in some kind of voter fraud?
Yeah, she's trying to claim that there was a voter intimidation and black people were in some districts were not allowed to vote and this and that and the other. When actually, if you actually go back and you look, Georgia has some of the strongest pro get the vote out agendas where it doesn't matter what county you're in. They actually have a number you can call, and they will come. If you don't have a way to get to the polls, if you don't have a way to get somewhere to register, they will come pick you up and take you to the courthouse so you can get registered. They will come pick you up and take you to the voting station polls so you can vote. So I don't know what she's talking about. Anybody who's not being allowed to vote, we have voter ID laws here in Georgia. Now you figure that one out.
Well, I'm just glad they make special accommodations, especially for the dead people. Because they're the most disenfranchised.
You know what that does, though? That takes away the ability for them to claim that people can't get the ID they need to vote. I mean, I'm so sick of that stupid. That's stupid. Anybody can get on a bus. Anybody can, get a taxi. They can get a ride. It's impossible to believe that just because a person is poor, they can't get downtown. Because I guarantee you they do not spend 365 days a year in their apartment or wherever they're living.
Yeah.
You'd go crazy. I just don't believe that. So if they can't bother to make the trip, then too bad.
Yeah. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, it's amazing to me how, supposed poor people around here, who get welfare checks and food stamps because whatever their reason, they actually don't have jobs. So they get food stamps and welfare and this and that and the other. They're driving really nice, newer model vehicles, and I'm driving an old, beat-up, rusted-out 72 Datsun 620 pickup. And, it's a sorry shame when it comes to that point. But that's what we're dealing with, and it's not just here in Georgia. I spent 33 years of my 57 years traveling this country, all over, north to south, east to west. I've been all over this country, and I see the same thing everywhere I go. It's the same thing, and it doesn't matter what the state minimum wage is or what the cost of living is or any of that. I see the same stuff everywhere I go. So this is a nationwide pandemic in and of itself.
Yeah.
That needs to be corrected.
Yep. Amen. Hey, thank you very much for the call. I'm up against the clock here, but good points as always.
When I left,
What were you saying?
I was going to say that that dark winter that Vicky mentioned earlier, in the chat room, I dropped a couple links. One was to the Center for something or other. I can't remember right off the top of my head what it is, but there's a link to their website, and I can email it to you, where they talk about it. And there's a link in there. It's early on when Vicky first mentioned it. There's also a link to the actual PDF for the actual exercise itself and the script that they ran by.
Okay, very good.
Tell that to you. You can take a look at it. See what you think.
Yeah, I was going to send
Appreciate
that to Darren. I have that on my hard drive too. So.
Okay, we got it. We got the break. So, hey, thank you very much. Appreciate the call. Talk to you later. There he goes, Art. And we got to take the top of the hour break. Hour number 3 of Govern America. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
New world order. New world order.
This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
A new world order. A world where the United Nations is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Nevertheless, the United States is in a key position to shape this so that the problem of the Bush presidency will be the emergence of a new international order.
The first decade of the 21st century, that out of what will be seen as the greatest restructuring of the global economy, a new world order was created.
Documenting the crisis of our republic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Waging war on the New World Order.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
This is Govern America with Darren Weeks and Vicky Davis.
Live from FEMA Regions 5 and 10, this is the third and final hour of Govern America. It continues to be the 25th of April, 2020, as we get right back into the show. 610-600-1776 is the number. That's 610-600-1776. Or you can call toll-free 844-646-8376, 844-6-GOVERN. Let's go back to the phones. Missouri, you're on the air. Hello.
Howdy. I have two things. Vicky, there are some people, either low-income, disabled, or senior citizens, that cannot get to the polling places. Ours is 18 miles, not on any bus routes, so you need to rethink your theory that everybody doesn't have access to services that maybe they should have. Now, my real point for calling in is the Oregon Department of Health has issued a book on how to, quote, self-pleasure, since a couple is not supposed to be together during this virus, but they can't do testing in Oregon.
A couple.
Say that again.
Say that.
The Oregon Department of Health has issued a book. It's on the Lars Larson show, and he just can't believe this. They can't test people up there. They don't have enough money, but they put out this book about what they call self-pleasure, that a couple should not get together during this virus.
Wow.
Oh, good grief.
Wow, that's
my 2 cents worth. By the way, we're not staying in. We're going out, and I keep telling people we're under house arrest, not quarantine, And I keep putting this word out to everybody I can. I pass out papers about the CDC, and I've been getting some resistance, but I just keep passing it out and so forth, and I think it is.
Yeah.
Okay, and I do have a comment on your situation, having to drive 18 miles to vote. That's an issue for your Secretary of State to resolve. Do you live 18 miles from a grocery store or a school?
No, we live from Walmart. And,
you live okay. Hold on.
So there are facilities in your area where there could be a polling place. So that's really a problem with your Secretary of State, and they should be able to resolve that. You know, unless you live out on a ranch or something like that. But I don't know. Our ancestors took care of it. They voted.
Well, this is why elections, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is why elections were held on Tuesday and usually are held on Tuesday to this day. My understanding of that was it was to give people a chance to travel by horse and carriage to the voting station after they attended Sunday services. You know, so things were a lot more difficult back in the day. What would you say?
And those days, disabled people were not allowed to vote anyway. Most of them were confined somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's a different
issue. So
issue.
there are people with different disabilities that have different transportation and issues of getting out and so forth. So you shouldn't be so harsh on people that are not normal. That's my 2 cents worth.
Well,
come on. It isn't a matter of being harsh on people who are not normal. It's that there are ways to do things, and it sounds to me like that it's your Secretary of State that is derelict in her duties.
How many people
I spoke to a woman here who had elections. She worked on them when she was a child with her mother, and she said they held they had polling places in people's homes, and that's where she helped her mother, because her mother had a polling place in her home.
Right.
Okay.
They don't do that nowadays.
So, and we have all kinds of services for people that are disabled. There are home health services and all kinds of things. And there is nothing to prevent them from having a polling place in a van, a portable, movable polling place for the minuscule percentage of people that actually cannot get out to vote.
Hey, by the way, are you on some kind of voice over IP phone?
So I'm still not buying the idea that that people can't vote. It's that your Secretary of State is not doing her job.
Yeah. Well, they've closed down a lot of places here in Michigan.
Home health care, by the way, the home health care people are not allowed to take people to the polls. They're not allowed to assist with absentee balloting because of fraud that's happened in the past. So you probably need to actually talk to several people with disabilities and seniors all over the country, and you can hear some amazing stories. That's why absentee ballot, I think, is an excellent thing. Now, I am against some of the computerized things they keep talking about where you can do it on the Internet. I think that's just open for fraud.
Well, so are mail-in ballots, but...
It absolutely is. And, okay, so they don't want the home health people to do it, but they could use the home health people to drive a voting
somebody who needs it.
captain or whatever, a precinct captain around to where the people are who need special help voting. So
well, good luck.
It's just a matter of coming up with a solution. You define the problem. There are solutions. So, don't blame me for...
no, I'm blaming your attitude of how you that's with disability. That's what I'm on, Vicky.
Well, we may have to agree to disagree on this.
But we disagree on people with disabilities, and you and I ain't never going to agree on how you feel about us people.
Well, I don't think she doesn't have anything.
Us people, you are not separate. You are different, perhaps only in your physical abilities. But I don't hold that against you. Like you're trying to make it sound like I'm against people with disabilities. I am not. I am saying that there are solutions to it, and you're barking up the wrong tree for who to go to for the solution. You have a Secretary of State in your state that is responsible to make sure, and you have a county elections person who is also responsible to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to vote.
By the way,
if they're not doing it in your state, it is because your elected officials are not doing their job.
Your phone is, by the way, really breaking up. I don't know. No.
Oh. I'm on the landline, so I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but it must be going over voice over IP.
That's my 2 cents worth. I'll let you get to the next phone call.
All right, well, appreciate the call. Thank you. Sometimes we have to agree to disagree and leave it at that. But anyway, I think now we're in a mood for a good pep talk, Vicky.
Are you going to give us one?
No, I'm not going to give you one. I'm going to defer. I'm going to defer it.
Okay.
To the brother of the Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
Oh boy. Okay.
You're in for one now. This is the doctor who, by the way, who argued for the death panels. Okay, and he's going to give you a nice cheering up. His name is Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel, the death panel doctor. He's going to give you a nice cheering up.
No one is immune to the COVID-19 virus. It threatens all of us. But while we are all experiencing the same pandemic, we are not experiencing it in the same way. The first dividing line is whether you or someone you love has gotten sick. Many Americans have not yet seen firsthand what devastation a positive test can inflict. Another dividing line is whether you have a job that lets you stay at home, working as you juggle childcare and video chats. 60 million Americans are still outering in place and instead tirelessly working to keep everything going for the rest of us. You keep the electricity flowing and the internet running, food and groceries moving. You are putting your own health on the line to ensure the rest of us are living as normally as possible. And then there are the tens of millions of Americans who have lost jobs and businesses, or who fear that they're just about to. Your anxiety about the virus is coupled with worry over having a paycheck, covering the mortgage, keeping the lights on, and buying food. Realistically, COVID-19 will be here for the next 18 months or more. We will not be able to return to normalcy until we find a vaccine or effective medications. I know that's dreadful news to hear. How are people supposed to find work if this goes on in some form for a year and a half? Is all that economic pain worth trying to stop COVID-19? The truth is, we have no choice. If we prematurely end that physical distancing and the other measures, keeping it at bay, deaths could skyrocket into the hundreds of thousands, if not a million. We cannot return to normal until there's a vaccine. Conferences, concerts, sporting events, religious services, dinner in a restaurant, none of that will resume until we find a vaccine, a treatment, or a cure. One thing I've learned as a cancer doctor is that it's wrong to paint an overly rosy picture in order to maintain a patient's hope. It's wrong because it fails. It's false. Biology and disease are formidable opponents that inevitably tell us the truth. We cannot relieve the oppression of this pandemic until we are realistic. We need to prepare ourselves for this to last 18 months or so and for the toll that it will take. We need to develop a long-term solution based on those facts. It has to account for what we are losing while this fight goes on. Things like schooling and income and contact with our friends and extended family. Lawrence, the crisis is not going to go away in a few weeks or after the 30-day plan comes to an end. Although COVID-19 is affecting us in different ways, we have to be up to it and fight together.
So he's saying this is going to go on, or needs to go on, for 18 months. Now, Anderson Cooper had a Harvard nutcase named Jonathan Grad from the Harvard School of Public Health. He says that without a vaccine, this social distancing nonsense could go on for 2 more years.
Your team used models of what we now know about COVID-19, along with other viruses, to create possible scenarios of the pandemic, one which concluded a potential need for social distancing until 2022. Can you explain how you found that?
Absolutely. So there are two ways in which the pandemic ends. One, we eliminate the virus. I think with global spread of the virus, that one is quite unlikely. In the second, pandemic ends because there's sufficient immunity in the population. So with that as a backdrop, we were interested in asking about the impact of social distancing and what happens when we stop a one-time effort. So we are doing social distancing with the idea of flattening the curve and trying to prevent overwhelming our healthcare infrastructure. If we're successful in doing that, we also keep a lot of people susceptible to the infection, so that if we stop social distancing after 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or what have you, there will still be a pool of people who are susceptible, and we might see, again, a rise in infection, which might prompt us to reinitiate social distancing. So keeping in mind that our goal is getting up to population-level immunity, in the absence of a vaccine or potentially other types of interventions, what we might see is this kind of on-off intermittent distancing. And to get up to population immunity, again, that end point, would take until 2022.
And that's predicated on the belief that once you have been infected, you would develop an immunity. Is that correct? Because, I mean, I know that hasn't been proven conclusively.
That is correct. We are, in this model, assuming that infection brings along with it sufficient immune protection to last at least that duration.
So the idea of 2022, that's just how, I mean, you got that date really just by projecting out when enough people would
pulling it out of his hind end,
develop what they call herd immunity.
That's right. So what we took as an approach to this is keeping in mind that we're flattening the curve to try to reduce the pressure on the healthcare infrastructure. That what we'd want to do is institute these social distancing measures when it looks like, when we project that we would start to approach what the critical care infrastructure is, that kind of the maximum there, and then we could turn it off as we're starting to see the curve go down. Again, we have this kind of thermostat model where we would titrate to, again, trying to maintain our healthcare infrastructure. When we use that as our goal, we end up projecting these multiple rounds of social distancing that takes us out to 2022.
So this is never going to be over if these characters
You know what I
have their
was
way.
thinking as he was talking? This is a test for the American people.
Absolutely,
how gullible and stupid are you?
Yeah.
You know, are you going to give up everything that makes America what our country was for what they're calling a pandemic that everything shows, all the statistics show, isn't one. And it's not a serious one for most people anyway. Well, there are a few people that it's serious for, but walking across the street is serious for some people.
You could get hit by a car.
Right. I mean, there's just, every time you go outside, things can happen to you. Stuff happens, as they say.
Yes, absolutely.
You can't live your life based on what might happen to you.
Well,
because you never go out anywhere, or never do anything, never, just curl up in a ball.
Well, that's what they want.
Yeah.
They want you to sit back and let the experts, quote unquote experts, manage your life, micromanage your life. And dictate when you can go outside, when you can stay, when you have to stay home, what you can buy at the store, which businesses can be open. We're already in communism. I mean, when the state,
yes, we are.
When the state is telling businesses when they can and can't be open, I mean, what would you call it? I mean, the government regularly is manipulating markets, controlling markets, quantitatively easing, picking winners and losers. I mean, how much more do you need, folks? You know, and I got to say, hats off to Adam Curry over at the No Agenda podcast for his eagle eye. I religiously watch these White House press briefings, so I don't know how I missed this. But it seems that the White House team has pulled a switcheroo with the data, Vicky.
Oh, really?
The press briefing of April 16th is when this was first introduced. And since then, I have heard President Trump mention the term again. But Mike Pence first came out on April 16th and introduced the new data. They have switched to an entirely new set of data. We're supposed to be tracking COVID-19. No. Now it's influenza-like symptoms.
In a word, because of the actions of this president, this administration, governors at every level, our healthcare workers, and our fellow Americans, we've saved lives. And every American should be comforted by that. Mm-hmm. And we can see it in the numbers. In the charts that I'll present today, these three maps track influenza-like illness, which in this instance is mostly coronavirus across America. The first map...
Influenza-like illness, which is mostly coronavirus.
Right. Well, and that's generic enough to
be anything.
Keep it going. For anything. I mean, the common cold. They could keep this going on forever just based on that description, that definition. Influenza-like.
That's the agenda. That's what they're planning on doing, I think.
It reflects the total number of cases on the week ending March the 28th. The next map reflects our data about the total number of cases on the week ending April 4th. And we stand here today with the final map reflecting the total number of cases across America as of April the 11th. With these trends underway, President Trump tasked the White House Coronavirus Task Force to develop new guidelines for opening up America again.
Okay, so that's April 16th. Now, the same press conference, Debbie Birx came out later and showed a chart which Adam Curry posted on a website. It was actually a redirect, but it's covidbullcrap.com. covidbullcrap.com. That's where he posted the chart that
he
Debbie
needs
Birx
to learn to speak his mind.
Well, good for him, you know. covidbullcrap.com is where the chart is, and I'll just describe it for you a little bit. The chart actually has a number of different lines for past, what would you want to call them, outbreaks or, you know, seasons. I guess seasons would be a good word. And, you know, by the way, the current season which is represented by the red line, is not the highest peak. Doesn't have the highest peaks. There is a season that's higher than that on the chart. So I'll just point that out. But the red line is the current season, and there are 3 different peaks that she's going to talk about here. And so, again, we're talking about an influenza-like illness, people.
In addition, the CDC has the influenza-like illness net distributed throughout the United States. Very useful in the wintertime. That first peak is influenza B in the red. That's this season. I showed you all the seasons here so you could see the seasons as they are displayed. The first peak is influenza B, second peak influenza A.
But they're all the same line.
And then you can see the coronavirus, and you can see its decline.
Okay, so what she's talking about here, again, this is all the same line. So this is one line with everything blended in together. Coronavirus, seasonal flu, you know, it's all a part of the same line. They're lumping it all together, and this is what you're supposed to be worried about.
And it's declining towards baseline. This will allow us, again, city by city, community by community, state by state, to look for variations in an early response mode in those localities that I described.
So, this is something that so it looks to me like they have shifted the data from COVID-19, which was bogus anyway, but now they're just including everything in there. Now, on April 20th, at the White House press briefing, a question was asked of John Roberts of Fox News, asked about a study that was done which included or indicated that the so-called pandemic was in line with the seasonal flu. The question was very, very important in and of itself because he cited a study here, and the study is very important. But also, Debbie Birx's response to the question also is very important.
Question for Dr. Birx. Yeah. Dr. Birx, University of Southern California and the LA County Public Health put out a report today that suggests that the penetrance of the virus is as much as almost 40 times what it was believed to be, that as many as 442,000 people in LA County may have been infected, which suggests two things. It suggests that you have a lot more people out there who could be spreading the virus, but it also suggests that the case fatality rate is more in line with the 2017-2018 flu than what we've seen in some other areas of the world. But I'm wondering if you've seen that, what your thoughts were.
So we're looking at all those studies very carefully.
Okay, now, before I get back to her, I want you to think about that. They put out a study saying basically that more people were infected than they previously thought, and the case, which would indicate, because of that, that the case fatality rate was more in line with the seasonal flu. Okay, that was the question that he asked, and this is her response.
So we're looking at all those studies very carefully, and I think you will remember over the last 3 weeks I've been talking about the level of asymptomatic spread and my concern about asymptomatic spread, because with flu and other diseases, when people are sick, it's easy to contact trace. When people are not sick and shedding virus, you have to have a very different approach, a very different sentinel surveillance approach, a sentinel monitoring approach, which we outlined in the guidelines. And it's why the guidelines took that very seriously. We knew that was unique for respiratory diseases, but it was because we were very concerned about the level of asymptomatic. And if you remember, we talked about younger age groups may have more asymptomatic disease, and your asymptomatic disease may decrease with your older age groups, and that your symptomatic disease might increase with age groups. This is still our working hypothesis. We have no data right now still to support that, but it's these kinds of studies that help that. We know that New York and Detroit and other cities are very interested, which we want to also support them in testing for frontline responders, first responders, and healthcare workers, because we think their exposure may have been the greatest. What we don't want to do, and I'm just going to do another 30 seconds on testing.
Okay, now listen closely to what she says right now. This part is very important.
These tests are not 100% sensitive or specific. And I'm going to go over this over and over again. So if you have 1% of your population infected, and you have a test that's only 99% specific, that means that when you find a positive, 50% of the time it will be a real positive, and 50% of the time it won't be.
Does that make any sense to you? Did she not just say that the tests are only accurate 50?
In terms of a system where they want to monitor the health of people 100% of the time forever. You know, when I studied the redesign of our healthcare system, my analysis was that they were designing the system to allow the entire population of the United States to become medical research lab rats, and without them actually
knowing it,
without the patient actually knowing about it,
and if you can't know, you can't consent.
Yeah, and what she's talking about there is the facilitation, moving towards that direction of 100% of the time monitoring the health of people. Because when you do medical research, you want to know everything about the patient always.
Yeah, hang on. We got the bottom of the hour break. We got a couple calls on the line. We'll get to your calls here in a moment.
Where the spooks go to find out what's really going on. This is Govern America.
All right, we're back. This is Govern America. Vicky Davis is here. I'm Darren Weeks. The website for the show is governamerica.com. That's governamerica.com. And Vicky's website is thetechnocratictyranny.com. Make sure you put the in there. Thetechnocratictyranny.com, and you can get to her other website from that homepage. Let's go back to the phones, and we have a caller from Colorado. Hello, Colorado. You're on the air.
Hello, Darren and Vicky.
Hi there.
I just wanted to chime in on what my state's daily check-in log requests, temperatures taken, and then wear masks, and they want regular testing, which they doesn't look like they're ready to implement that part yet. Go at 50% capacity. But if you have headache, sore throat, fever, dry cough, recent inability to taste or smell, shortness of breath, body aches, fatigue, diarrhea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. Now tell me, what did they miss that you could possibly get and lump into it?
On any given day, I might have one or more of those.
Yeah, and NBC News, NBCnews.com. Tested positive for coronavirus? Health workers may share your address with the police.
Oh, good grief.
Police say information helps first responders stay safe, but some privacy advocates and public health experts are raising concerns. Well, you think so? Yeah, and this contact tracing, they're planning on using Bluetooth.
Well, that's another one, yes.
Yeah, they're planning on using people's Bluetooth beacons when they're walking around with their phones to determine who. So basically, the phones are going to have, I guess, apps built into them, which collect the data on other Bluetooth beacons that the phone comes into contact with. And so, if you come into contact with a known coronavirus patient, shall we say, that information somehow gets phoned home. And, it's a terrible violation of privacy for a variety of reasons. And I'm sure the government would love to have that data.
It's the system that I've talked about in a different context, where they will be tracking your every move. Yeah. On the highway system, it's the tracking of every mile that you drive so that they can tax you by the mile. It's the smart meter on your home that tracks, when you use electricity. If you get up in the middle of the night 5 times to urinate, they know that you have a problem. It's full. It's the panopticon.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The open air panopticon, and it is, from my point of view, given what I know about systems and what they can do with these systems, it is evil beyond imagination. What they can and what they will do with this data.
These are electronic chains, and
yes,
they are.
I wanted to add.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Melody.
I wanted to add one more thing, because Fauci had a number of discussions that he was talking about creating a universal vaccine, and it would be kind of like if you were going to have the base for mixing paint, you would have the mixture already prepared, and then they just tweak it with whatever color they add to paint. Well, what I would see, and I would have to question is, and they have to have the viruses from various different flu strains or whatever in that base. And so if they're doing testing, then those are going to show up. And if they're not specific, like you were just mentioning earlier with that lady,
Debbie Birx.
The point is that's
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just wanted to add that.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
But you didn't finish your thought. You said the point is.
Did you?
That whatever the antibodies that would show up in the vaccines that they're testing for, it could be from any one of those. And they would be in your blood from however length of time you've been getting vaccinations, from what I'm thinking. Do you see what I'm saying? Because if they've got to be able to have that base there, then it's going to be a mixture of all these other antigens or whatever it is, antibodies. I'm not an expert.
Yeah, well, the problem is...
It's a witch's brew.
They all mutate.
Yeah,
They mutate. And so anything they come out with is not going to be effective. Already it has mutated, according to what I've been reading. There's multiple different strains now. And so how are we to believe that this is going to have any beneficial public health effect, even if their intentions were, even if they were angels and their intentions were nothing but noble and honorable, which we know that is BS. But they mutate, and they mutate rapidly.
Right.
So the effectiveness is this is nothing more than a big money scheme for those that are involved, like Bill Gates and Fauci and others. But it's also it's a power grab, and it's a means. I think it's population control. I think it's Agenda 21.
Definitely, Deb.
Yeah, I do too. I think it is to weed out the useless eaters, as they call them. And,
and probably a lot of useful eaters too.
Oh yeah, yeah. But the according to a profile of Adonis and whoever the female equivalent is, if they only want to keep the Hitlerian version of the perfect person, then the vaccines would be a good way to do it.
You're talking about the eugenics agenda. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. Hey,
parents need to be...
What's that?
They're worrying about the flu vaccine on this end, but the parents need to be paying attention to the vaccinations that they're giving to the children, starting out with day one. And from what I was looking at, some of the protocols, they're giving them a hepatitis B from day one, within 2 or 3 of them within the first 3 months, let alone up to 30 to 50 vaccinations by the time they're 4 or 5.
Yeah.
That body has no way to develop. That's just making them toxic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what they intend, I believe, to do. If the public is willing to lay down and take these vaccines, it won't just be one time. I mean, they're saying this thing could keep coming back over and over again, and we're going to have other pandemics that arise. So if they're able to get all the money off of the government and siphon off all these funds to God knows who and God knows where, this is not going to be a one-off. They're going to keep coming back for more and more and more and more, and they don't care about the public health. They don't care about killing people. They don't care about crippling people for life. They've done it before. We played last week the 1976 swine flu thing. That's in the show notes of last week if you want to go and watch it, if you didn't catch last week's show. The point is they've done it before, and I think they're going to keep doing it again. And only I think it's going to be a lot more frequent if people go for this.
Right.
What?
They've turned our country into a research laboratory, and they plan on using everybody as a lab rat.
Absolutely. What did you say, Melody?
Right. I just said that if we don't push back now, they're going to continue until we finally do. But at that point, if it isn't already too late now. So.
Yeah. Well, we got to keep trying. Hey, I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Blessings to you. All right, we'll talk to you later. Let's go to California and talk to John now. And if my system will ever respond. Okay, John, go ahead.
Hey, great. Do you guys know who Dr. Judy Mikovits is?
I don't believe so, no.
I did listen to the Thomas Paine interview with her, and it was really very interesting. Yeah, I listened to it last night, so we didn't have a chance to talk about it.
Okay, you guys are talking over each other. Go ahead, John.
I sent the link to that interview to the email with the one about the 50 tons of vitamin C that was delivered to Wuhan. Listen, she answers. She's the one that found that HIV and AIDS are not the same thing, that they're actually separate. She's a virologist that proved that chronic fatigue syndrome actually is a cytokine storm and how it works and what happens. She's the one that never went along with Fauci and the cabal, and it is a thriller beyond belief. I could not stop listening to that. The neat thing about the Pain podcast is this, is that he doesn't get in her way. He allows her to tell the story from the beginning. She talks about the pay-to-play, the threats, trying to kill her, sending the SWAT after her, trying to get the research. It is a story beyond belief. Now, if people hear that podcast, everything you guys have been talking about right now is answered. She knows what COVID is. She tells you how they can tell exactly where that thing was done and exactly what kind of strain it was on. This woman is probably the bravest woman, braver than any soldier, what she's gone through. And she's in the open. She's written 2 books on it. That podcast right there will give people the ammunition they need to begin believing that the government is lying to them. And she has got Fauci right down to his short hairs. He is in the middle of it. And he had power, though not in law enforcement. He can tell the law enforcement that, you're a terrorist. And all of a sudden, they got government coming after you all over.
Is she the one that was
here?
She was actually working for him or something, and she came out. Seems like I don't remember what the name was, but I think I remember seeing a video of a woman talking about him, and he went after her in a big way.
He's still after her.
Yeah.
Listen, Mikovits, it's spelled M-I-K, V as in Victor, or M-I-K-O-V-I-T-S, V-I-T-S, Mikovits. I listened to some of the YouTubes before, and she's never really allowed to get the whole story out. That podcast gives the whole story, and you are not going to believe what this woman has done for us. She really has the tools right there to get our freedom, because the way she explains it, and she goes into great detail explaining what a virus is, what is XMRV. They knew. In fact, they have tainted the entire world blood supply. And she tells you exactly how they did it, and they knew they were doing it. And it'll blow these people out of the water.
Okay.
Somebody out there has got to be an honest politician that can start going back and fighting back at our state level. I mean, the crime that they have committed is probably, I don't think I'm exaggerating by saying that it's the worst crime against humanity that has ever been.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and I did hear about the tainting of the blood supply during the, I think it was the Clinton administration, wasn't it? There were a lot of things going on with the FDA,
okay, hold on,
and all kinds of stuff going on in the 1990s. With HIV that I remember, but I don't remember in detail.
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep people,
She'll give it to you in detail. You got to hear this. You've got to hear this.
Now, when did you send your
link? Anyway, I'll get it to you, Darren.
Okay, very good. Sounds good. Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate the call, John.
Skip the first 20 minutes.
Okay.
Skip the first 20 minutes. It's just at right about 20 minutes. He brings in Robert Kennedy Jr., who's talking about how fantastic Judy is, and then she comes on right after him and then begins the story. And that whole thing is a story. This is the bravest woman I've ever heard of.
Wow. That's quite an endorsement. Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for...
Yeah, especially because I'm ex-Army. I know what bravery is.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Blessings to you, man. I appreciate everything you do, and I appreciate you bringing that into the show today. All right.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Yeah, I listened to that. I got the link last night, and I listened to most of it. I didn't get it finished. Otherwise, you'd have had it, Darren.
Okay.
But it was good.
Very good. All right, let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Wisconsin. And hello, caller. I think this is Mary from Wisconsin. You're on the air.
Mary or Murr in
okay.
Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Yeah, I'll get to what I was going to tell you, but what he was just saying, about Dr. Judy Mikovits, I have a couple things too, and I'll put it all in the chat room and I'll send to both of you. But there's also, when you said about dark winter, I think it was, right?
Yeah, Vicky said that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of exercises, and one of them is Clade X, Cladex. And the woman that's exposing that is Celeste Bishop Salom. So I'll send you information about her, too, in that operation.
Okay, you going to drop it into the chat room?
I'll put them in the chat, and I'll put them in both of your emails.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But she's also onto these vaccines. They already have 48 vaccines ready. They want people begging for them.
Oh, yeah.
This is what they're doing. So don't do it. Yesterday, I chastised an Amishman who was wearing a mask.
Wow.
It was hilarious. It was only he and I in the shop there, and I had gone down to the little co-op, and they had chalkboard things out. You can come around the back and get your order. Well, I don't have a cell phone, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play these stupid games. And I was planning to go anyway to the Amish, and they're just like real people.
So, yeah, they are real people. In fact,
oh, no, you're wearing a mask?
Their lifestyle is
We have it.
Massively under attack.
There's two in the county. The county is 1,250 square miles. And besides, what is it? Somebody has a sniffle somewhere?
Well, I wonder how they got word.
This is nonsense.
I wonder how they got word.
It's so ridiculous. But, they keep pounding and pounding, and what they want to do along with this is frighten us about the Chinese, every one of them. It took them 12 and a half years to do that to the Christian Germans with us, to get us to go kill them. Little, country less than the size of Texas, and it took them 12 and a half. And that was with Stalin and FDR and Ike and Churchill, and they're all unelected, and they would, dictators, the three empires, and it took them 12 and a half years to go after. Meanwhile, Germany was usury-free for 10 years. That was their crime. How many movies have they made about that? The victims? The victors posing as victims.
Yeah.
I'm tired of this. This is the Holocaust we're having now, okay?
Well, this certainly does look to me like the culling of the population, Mer. I'm very, very concerned.
Their main two objectives are depopulation and technocracy, and if you notice, it's kind of blending. I'm kind of here in the middle of nowhere, and I look at what I want to look at and don't what I don't, and enjoy nature. But you see people, expecting this to be. I said this before to you, and Vicky picked up on it about Stuxnet. It's like we're somehow like computers now, and a virus is just going to pop up somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they're acting.
Yep.
Now people.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing better than computer systems for sorting people. IBM was involved with the Hitler regime, and in terms of keeping track of the Jews, recording and where they lived and everything about them, and where they were sent. They used IBM computers to do that.
Well, Wall Street provided
You know what? Guess what? Back then, just like now, the Phoenicians or the Jews or whatever you want to call them, were all amongst us running these operations against their own.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
Yep.
So it's not like it's a Hitler, this. See, we're told that in these movies, these endless movies that lie.
Well, I know, and there's no reason to believe that a Jew wouldn't attack another Jew. Any more reason to think that a black wouldn't attack another black, or a white wouldn't attack another white. I mean, it's ridiculous to lump people in an entire category and think that they're all the same just because of some characteristic, whether it be religion or color or, whatever. People have all kinds of motivations for doing things, and in some cases the motivation is just simply that they're a psychopath.
Well, one thing I've learned a long time ago, and that is there's always two sides to every story. History certainly is no exception. There's always two sides to every story, and you only typically get one.
Well, there's three sides. There's two sides, and then there's the truth, right?
Very well stated.
Oh, you know what I really wanted to call about, though, too, besides that Cladex, was Tom Rogers. Was that Mel in Colorado? She had reminded me before, she had reminded us that something about Tom Rogers in Utah. Mm-hmm. And he has such expertise in a lot of these things. And he's being, he calls into RBN shows a lot. And they're really getting down on him because one of their main sponsors is this carcass lifter.
Carcass lifter?
A carcass lifter?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, he lifts pigs and cows, so people don't hurt their backs and stuff, carcasses for meat, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what the expertise Tom is talking about. How meat can become infected because animals run a higher temperature. So then they can pass it on through, blood to blood when we're carving up their carcasses, right?
Interesting.
So that's one reason a lot of these meat packing places, everybody got so sick, is because that is how it's transmitted. But every time Tom tries to address this, now he's getting shut down over there at RBM. Stadtmiller, calling the different hosts, and so that's why. But anyway, I'll put his information in the chat room and send to you too. He got chemically blinded when he was in Washington. You've probably heard the story where he was fighting against this. GassingAmerica.com is his site, and his number's at the bottom there. But he was fighting against these trailers that are gassing people. They purposely designed them and prefab homes with the air intake right next to where the gas is exhausted. So it's drawing in this gas, and then
they're not supposed to be producing gas.
They're dying from this.
Yeah, if you have gas inside your home, you're in trouble anyway.
Well, I think she's talking about the trailers that had a lot of formaldehyde in them.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Is that right?
Is that what?
Well, that too. But no, I am talking about burning gas and.
Well, the gas is supposed to go up a chute out the chimney. Now, if you got carbon monoxide,
it's too close.
You
have the air intake right next, like within 3 feet.
It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter. The air, the carbon monoxide is supposed
to draws in the exhaust. But anyway, that was a really major problem, and children really suffering from it. And then they try to blame the parents.
Yeah.
That, they're abusing their children when they're being killed by this.
Yeah, well, they do the same thing for the vaccination thing, too. We're just about out of time.
He's very keen. So I'll give you that. I'll send you those numbers. I'd really like you, if you can, maybe get in touch with him and have him come on your show.
Okay. All right.
Have him call in.
All right. Appreciate the call.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Codes. That actually sounds like a building codes problem.
Yeah. There's not supposed to be, the result of anything burning is carbon monoxide, fuels and things like that. And it should be vented appropriately to the point where it goes outside. Now, if that's not happening, then you do have a problem, and it doesn't matter if your furnace is sucking it in or not. The fact that you have it in your house, most people should have carbon monoxide detectors. I know I've got one near the furnace because sometimes these things do malfunction, and you need to be aware of it because you won't. If you're not aware of it, you could end up not waking up. Let's just put it that way. Somebody will find your lifeless corpse somewhere later, down the road. But anyway.
Cherry thought. Is this going to be another one of those shows where we end on a way downer?
Downer Darren, that's what you could call me. Earlier we were talking about the John Roberts question at Fox News. I think that was pretty interesting, the fact that he cited that study. And I wanted to, we just about don't have time for this, but I wanted to come back to that for just a moment. There was an interaction on April 20th before the press briefing where John Roberts came in and he told another reporter, take off your mask. The whole thing is a hoax. And this created quite a sensation on the internet. So I'll just play this.
What's up, Barry? All right, man. Where do you go, baby? You can take out the mask, Doug. The case fatality rate's like 0.1 to 0.3 according to USC. Is it really? That's reassuring. USC. Everybody here's been vaccinated anyway. USC and LA County Public Health came out with a study. They found that there are 7,000 cases in California, but they really believe that there are anywhere from 221,000 to 442,000 people who were infected. Really? Yeah.
So that makes it 0.1 to 0.3?
study you give out later? Yeah, just give it to that. So it suggests the case fatality risk of 10. Wow. Which puts you right in line with the flu. Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. So it was a hoax. I don't think it was a hoax.
Okay, so I know it's hard to hear. So I'll just read you what he said. He said, USC and LA County Public Health have come out with a study. They found that there were 7,000 cases in California, but they really believe that there were anywhere from 221,000 to 442,000 people who were infected. The other reporter replied, really? So that makes it 0.1 to 0.3, talking about the percentage. And John Roberts says, yeah, so it suggests that the case fatality rates are 1/10 of what it seems to be. So it was a hoax. Now, he came out later after people seized upon this, and he says, I was just joking. You know, it's you know, the study is real, but it's not a hoax. You know, so there you go. I mean, for whatever that's worth, I thought it was interesting enough to mention. But
yeah.
I think suffice it to say we're being lied to.
Mm-hmm.
No question about
and
it.
People misinterpret things and don't think things through. That's my biggest complaint. People don't think things through.
Yeah. Be careful what you buy into, folks. Well, fastest 3 hours in talk radio. Gone again until next week. Hey, thanks always, Vicky, for what you do. I appreciate you.
To you, too. It's always fun. I love doing these radio programs.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, God bless you, folks. We'll talk to you next week. Spread the word about the broadcast. Pray for this republic. Do what you can to restore it. And we'll be back, next week, 7 days. And in the meantime, keep your head up, keep your chin up, and educate your friends and neighbors. Very important to educate. Spread the information far and wide because we have a lot at stake. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.